Welcome back. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 1 year in office has, of course, received lots of commentary from markets and investors alike on what really is the road ahead now. Ravi Uppal, MD and CEO at JSPL, joining us. Mr. Uppal, let's talk about the Make in India campaign specifically. From a sector point of view, how would you rate it and what would you have liked to see from the government on that front?
I think the Make in India campaign launched by government is very well sort of timed. I think it's the need of the country. Our manufacturing share within the total GDP was constantly declining. It had come down to the level of 16%, whereas a country like China has about 32% of a much larger GDP. For India to go forward, and given our demographic size, I think having a sound manufacturing sector is not a choice, but it's a must for us. So I think the government has brought in perspective the need of Make in India. But I think, that Make in India also has to be complemented by Buy India, which is what United States and China have been doing. So I would reckon that in whichever form, this can be encouraged. I think we should encourage that. The Make in India campaign by the government, is touching every industry, especially which are more labor intensive, because in this country, the employment of our young people is a very major concern. And I think the manufacturing sector has a lot to offer in terms of employment they can give to our young people.
All right, Mr. Uppal, just do hold on. We've also got the Piyush Goyal press conference starting. Okay, we'll cover to that in just a moment. Of course, addressing again the government's 1 year in office. But let's come back to our conversation with Mr. Uppal. How has the affordable housing push also benefited the steel industry, Mr. Uppal? Have you started seeing any changes on ground?
Well, let me first say that the first year the government has focused on developing a roadmap, a vision, and also enabling policy framework. And they have, of course, announced a lot of schemes to stimulate the growth of the infrastructure sector and the housing sector. But it's taking a little bit of time before we could really see that in terms of tangible demand. We are already seeing some green shoots in terms of demand, but I think in another 3 to 4 months' time, I think the demand in the market for steel and other construction products should really look up. Last year has been a very tough year for the steel industry in India, not only in India but globally. And I think that the lift in demand during the coming year should really help us the steel industry to see better times than they have done in the past.
Now, do you wish that the coal auctions were handled slightly differently? How should the government, according to you, have perhaps improved on that entire process?
Well, as for coal auction is concerned, this was once again in line with the Coal Act. I think when the new government came in, they found that there was very serious issue with regard to the fuel availability to the power industry and other industry using coal. And in order to bring clarity, they came first with the ordinance, and later on, they made it into a Coal Act, under which all the coal mines in future are going to be sold in a very transparent way through auction. And one beginning of this has been made. There have been learnings for the government as well as for the bidders, and I'm sure that as we go into future, I think both government and bidders are going to be more pragmatic and when it comes to acquiring the coal mines. Parallelly, the government has also pushed the production of Coal India in a substantial way. I'm very happy to see that last year the total coal production grew by 8.5%, which I think is really creditable. I'm sure that in about less than 2 years, India is going to be almost surplus in coal, and coal could become a non-issue when it comes to its supply to steel and power industry.
Now, the Modi government's aggressively been wooing foreign investors, Mr. Uppal. Do you see enough interest on that front in terms of investment in the steel sector? How are you looking at that, and particularly post all the tax confusion?
Well, let me take the second part first. There was confusion in the past with regard to taxation. I think the present government is, trying to bring clarity to the whole taxation issue. in assuring all investors that their interests will be protected and there will be continuity of the tax regime and there will not be frequent changes. So I think there was some period in between when the whole issue was under debate and some specific cases were discussed, but I'm sure the government will find an amicable settlement and ensure that the investor confidence is not adversely affected. So that is one part. The second is India, the Modi government's contact with investors outside has been very impressive. He has gone and communicated with them about the new India's agenda, growth agenda, and what we intend to do. I think it definitely has inspired many investors outside. Of course, they will they will take a little time before they start investing, but on the whole, it has created a very positive sentiment all around.
All right, Mr. Uppal, thanks so much for joining us today with your take on the government's first year in office. Let's also get you the latest on TVS Sri Chakra. They posted a steady set of Q4 earnings. Profits helped, of course, by higher other income and also lower finance costs. Joining us on those numbers is the director, Mr. Vijay Raghavan. Sir, just to first understand from you what really helps this quarter in terms of achieving operational efficiencies, profits were up 55%.
Well, not only the quarter, the whole year you would have seen, we've been able to control a lot of costs, and particularly the raw material costs softening a little, and judicious inventory management, and bringing down the interest cost, as well as top line growth, and in particular the growth